the CEO of the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, RNAO. I am joined today by Dr. Angela Cooper Brathwaite, a nurse practitioner, NP Corsita Garraway, both co-chairs of the RNAO Black Nurses Task Force. With us today are also President-elect Claudette Holloway, also a member of the task force, and our President, Morgan Offord. Other members of the task force will be introduced to you by our co-chairs in a few minutes. We would like to thank everyone for coming today and for your interest in the release of what we consider the most important report, our groundbreaking report of the Nursing Task Force, acknowledging, addressing, and tackling anti-Black racism and discrimination within the nursing profession. As we all know, February is Black History Month. It is an important time to share the stories and perspectives of the Black community, stories of Black excellence, stories of wrongdoings, stories of pain, and stories of accomplishments. It is also time to unite and work together to raise awareness and bring an end to anti-Black racism and discrimination. And we need to start with a look at the mirror with our own nursing profession. Racism is a determinant of health and plays a key role in generating and reinforcing social inequities. It continues to be deeply embedded in health systems and structures within Canada. Racism is a public health crisis that cannot be ignored. It threatens the health and well-being of racialized nurses. It limits their capacity to fully advance their careers and contributions to the health system. And it can compromise their ability to provide safe and compassionate care for Ontarians and for Canadians. It is why RNAO will leave no stone unturned until we see an end to anti-Black racism within the nursing profession and until we dismantle systemic racism in Ontario and around the world. I remembered how I felt as I watched, along with millions of others, the murder of Mr. George Floyd on May 2020. To see a Black man brutalized and murdered on camera by a white police officer was shocking, was appalling. I recall with clarity the chills and aftershock I felt. I knew anti-Black racism existed. However, it awakened me to the gravity of the situation and the enormous damage caused by systemic racism, which is so deeply ingrained in our structures in the US, here in Canada, and indeed around the world. Knowing that urgent and immediate action was needed, I asked our immediate past president, Dr. Angela Cooper Brathwaite, and NP Corsita Garraway, to lead a task force who would work together to eliminate anti-Black racism and discrimination, first within nursing, then within the health system, and then in society. We knew we had to start with our own backyard. I would now like to ask Dr. Cooper Brathwaite to share more information about our task force members, how they were chosen, the methodology and work, and the task force and its accomplishments. Dr. Angela Cooper Brathwaite.
Thank you so much, Dr. Doris Grinspun, and good morning to everyone, and we welcome you with open arms. When Dr. Doris Grinspun asked me to lead the task force and to act as its co-chair, I knew how important it was to advance transformational change. Black nurses have suffered quietly for a long time. Some speak out openly with each other about racism and discrimination they face at school or at work, but most do not or either share their fear due to fear or hopelessness that nothing would change. The very first webinar we held revealed the gravity of the issue before us. We knew that anti-Black racism and discrimination extended because we face it every day. It exists in all health sectors and academic institutions. We began our search for fellow task members in June of 2020 with a call for expressions of interest. The selection process for our group was based on applicants from members of our RNAO who self-identify as Black and who had an interest in being part of the task force, and they had to identify the rationale why they wanted to join the task force. We also knew the importance of including nursing students, and we needed to ensure task force members who identify as Black represented all sectors of health, of the healthcare system, geographic regions, and of the province. We are so pleased with the outpouring of interest and support to engage in this important work. I'm proud to say our task force is comprised of registered nurses, nurse practitioners, and nursing students who have a wealth of knowledge and a depth of experience. Along with my co-chair, Corsita Garraway, they include Aliyah Ali, Rene Bradley, Abiola Akim-Remy, Keisha Jeffries, Raquel Campbell, Daria Adèle Jüudi-Hope, Dania Versailles, Aliyah Kim Baker, Dion Sinclair, Olga Abanta Thomas Obewe, Morris Couping, Adikumbi Taiwo, Cheryl Larand, RNAO President-elect Claudette Holloway, and Paula Wallace. Throughout 2020 and 2021, the task force was engaged in various activities to take action and to collectively to explore the stories and lived experiences of Black nurses. The task force hosted monthly Let's Talk About Racism webinars for Black nurses, nursing students, and the public at large to engage them in meaningful conversations about our experiences and our healthcare system, and also to tackle systemic racism in Ontario and within our healthcare system. We participated in numerous speaking engagements about those lived experiences of racism in academic and clinical settings. We also appeared in media to talk about the task force and its work. We conducted online survey of 205 Black nurses and nursing students in Ontario on racism and discrimination against them, and we analyzed the qualitative data from this survey. I want to take a moment to thank those who participated in our survey and engaged in our webinars. You made a difference by providing your information in the survey and by attending and sharing your stories. Your generosity shared your knowledge, your skills, experience, and time. As part of our work, we also delivered numerous presentations on racism at different agencies. We published 2 articles in the Nursing Inquiry, a renowned peer-reviewed journal, presented our work at 2 international conferences, and of course, we explored the historical perspective of systemic racism on Black people in Canada. All of this work and effort was synthesized in the report we are releasing today. The report the report is organized in 4 pillars, which you will see on the report's cover. They are education, research, advocacy, and partnership. I am proud to be part of the group that is leading a social movement to address systemic anti-Black racism and discrimination that has existed for many years in our nursing profession. And I would be remiss in not sharing what I've experienced in my own career. Being subjected to racial taunts referred to as the Black nurse, not by my name, asked where I was really from, teased about my hair, having my grades reduced from an A to a B by a racist professor when I was in undergraduate school, not having the opportunity to be taught by Black professors. I've attended 3 Canadian universities in 3 different provinces, and I've never had one Black professor. In my second year as teaching, 60 hours of my in-class content was stolen from my office without any investigation to retrieve this material, no reduction in coursework. These were demeaning experiences and deeply wounding. But one thing I've learned to do is forgive those who have hated me. It helped to bring healing, emotional and psychological healing to me. These and other stories and the results from an Ontario-wide survey point to the dire need for better support for Black nurses, especially from employers and academic institutions. I would now like to introduce MP Corsita Garraway, co-chair of the Black Nurses Task Force, to further discuss the findings and recommendations of this report. Corsita?
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Angela, and thanks, Dr. Grinspun. So as my colleague mentioned, the scoping review of the literature and our survey findings revealed the unjust story of Black nurses in Ontario and how they are significantly and negatively affected by systemic racism within the nursing profession. We developed 19 recommendations which touch on every aspect of the profession and address the gaps we found, including the absence of race-related data, the underrepresentation of Black nurses in post-secondary nursing education, and the underrepresentation of Black nurses as faculty, as managers, and as senior nurse executives, presidents, and CEOs of hospitals and other health organizations. Our research and survey also showed that too often Black nurses often work in entry-level positions, non-specialty roles, or when coming to Ontario and Canada as internationally educated nurses, end up working as unregulated personal support workers. Our first set of recommendations fall under the theme of reducing barriers in academic and workplace settings. Number 1, to provide equitable and fair placements for Black nurses in all practice settings. So for example, Black nursing students should not be disproportionately placed in long-term care settings during their final consolidation. 2, provide tools and resources to support Black nurses as they navigate difficult challenges when dealing with residents, patients, or families who display racism. 3, include diversity, equity, and inclusion, a DEI committee, in all workplaces and academic settings to address racism and discrimination. 4, include racism and discrimination as a topic in nursing and interprofessional curriculums. This includes race and racism as a social determinant of health in the educational curriculum for both undergraduate and nursing students. 5, hold all staff, being professors, managers, healthcare providers, accountable for addressing racial discrimination and develop specific strategies to combat it. 6, create safe spaces for Black nurses to open up about the discrimination and oppression they face in professional settings. 7, increase access to mental health supports in the workplace and academic settings to address traumas related to racism. 8, develop and enforce policies on anti-racism, such as zero tolerance of racism from staff and nursing leaders, patients, and families. 9, create educational and research grants, financial incentives, scholarships targeted specifically for Black applicants. And 10, collect and disseminate race-based data. Our next set of recommendations fall under the theme of increasing education and building awareness. So number 11 is acknowledging that systemic racism and discrimination exists at individual, organization, and policy levels. Non-Black nurses must identify and address individual biases with respect to anti-Black racism. They need to be encouraged by their organization to continually engage in reflective practice and delve into their perceptions and experiences in order to assess inherent biases and values. Number 12, develop and implement anti-racism, anti-oppression, cultural safety and diversity, equity and inclusion, DEI training, and orientation for staff at all levels in all workplace and academic settings. Number 13, embed mentorship programs in workplaces for Black nurses to facilitate professional growth and development, and to improve recruitment and retention of Black employees. Number 14, provide mentoring programs for nursing students to enhance academic achievements, reduce stress, anxiety, and dropout rates, and to empower Black students. Number 15, provide mandatory courses or workshops that include topics of cultural humility, anti-oppressive behaviors, anti-racism, trauma-informed care in orientation and continuing education programs. Our final set of recommendations cover the theme of developing and implementing advocacy strategies. Number 16, advocate for the establishment of a commission similar to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to investigate and address racism against Black Canadians. Advocate for diversity in leadership, senior and/or administrative education roles in the nursing profession as well as health sectors. Number 18, stand in solidarity through partnership with healthcare associations and organizations. Advocate to diversify their senior team and provide equitable opportunities for Black individuals at the senior, executive, and management levels. Number 19, advocate for the federal and provincial governments to address racism against Black Canadians and include Black history within the educational curriculum in Canada. These changes we are recommending are long overdue. We hope to empower Black nurses and allies to stand up and take action against anti-Black racism in nursing and the health system. I too would like to share some of my experiences while I had the opportunity to be taught by a professor who was Black. My student colleagues assumed that I was getting good marks simply because I was a Black, not because of my knowledge or my drive to do well. That hurt, was unfair. And I too was teased about the way I dressed, my hair. I was passed over for positions I knew I was qualified for, and worse. Once I was told I was being interviewed as a courtesy, and later learned that the position was given to a candidate who was white. So although our task force was formed out of anguish and pain, our work and our report are examples of triumph over adversity. Our findings represent calls to action for healthcare organizations and employers, regulatory bodies, nursing education programs, and the broader health system. They are current, they are urgent and necessary to call out anti-Black racism, combat its damaging effects, and to uproot and overturn the barriers that hold us back. Thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you very, very much, NP Corsita Garraway and Dr. Angela Cooper Brathwaite. I would now like to ask two members of our task force who lead the RNAO Black Nurses Leading Change Interest Group, an interest group that actually came out of the recommendation of the task force. So it was formed as we were, our colleagues were developing the report. I would like them to say a few words about the group and about their experiences. And I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Daria, Adèle, Jüudi-Hope, and Dania Versailles.
Thank you, Doris, for the introduction. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you this morning and introducing our report to Ontario, and hopefully the rest of Canada is watching and listening. This has been a tremendous opportunity for me as a young nurse to be involved in the work the RNAO championed for Black nurses of Ontario. And now, after 2 years, we have a Black nurses interest group within our organization for all nurses in Ontario to be a part of, to come together in a safe space and discuss issues that we face in the workplace or at school. Because we understand that with the work we've done within the task force itself, we're just touching the surface of the issues that we are facing as a collective. And so I'm looking forward to mentorship opportunities that nurses looking like me would be able to access, hopefully through the work we'll continue doing with the RNAO, as well as sharing ideas and way to survive and cope in the society as itself is learning to address the issues of discrimination and systemic racism.
Thank you, Daria. For me to be part of the founding members, some of the founding members that created the Black Nurses Leading Change Interest Group was a natural progression from the work that the Black Nurses Task Force has been working on. And, in this world, no one can do it alone. And there's power in networking and connecting with other individuals who look like me and who have the same needs. And yes, I was reading in the chat earlier, there's power in pain. Magic happens when connection happens and networking opportunities are within our reach. And to transform this pain and these negative experiences and to build new pathways, new opportunities for current nurses and other healthcare providers as well, who are Black and who are for sure have been experienced similar unfortunate experiences, as my colleagues previously alluded to or described. It's necessary and it's required for existing professionals and also future ones. When I started my career and throughout my over 2 decades of nursing, such group did not exist. And it's when finally now we feel that the world is paying attention and listening to us. The veil we removed the veil. And now when we know better, we need to do better. And so for me, it's groundbreaking and a personal privilege to be able to forge the new way for future generations of nurses and as well other healthcare providers to improve the profession, whether it be at work or in classrooms. And personally, I have a keen interest in seeing opportunities to help others grow and advance their careers. And that's what the connection and the networking and mentorship opportunities be it formal or informal, will be able to create for the, senior management, future researchers of this world. And yes, it's very personal. And I believe that this is historical and this is important work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dania and Daria. There were the days that we were thinking, is a report needed? Everything is known, let's just take action. And we decided, no, it needs to be documented. It needs to serve ongoingly as a mirror, as a reminder, as a echo, always in our heads, done by colleagues with lived experience. We have accomplished much with the release of this report. However, colleagues, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. RNAO, together with task force members and the Black Nurses Leading Change Interest Group, will continue to call for decisive action within our own organizations and in others, and ensure meaningful change is enacted to overcome the systemic racism. And let me repeat that, systemic racism. It's not about only one of our colleague nurses. It's not about two. It's not about an example. It's about all of our colleagues that exist in our profession. At times, we also thought, and we got requests from external groups to tackle this disease or that disease, and I brought it always to the co-chairs, and we said, no, we will stay focused in our backyard. It's very easy to look at other parks. Let's start with our own. So colleagues, on behalf of Dr. Angela Cooper Brathwaite and NP Corsita Garraway and all the members of the task force, and also on behalf of RNAO Board of Directors and staff, I would like to thank you for coming and for your interest. We will open it now for questions, and also if you have questions afterwards or would like to speak with any of the amazing 17 task force members, including the two co-chairs, including the two leaders of the new interest group, including our president-elect, who is also a member of the task force, and of course, our president, Morgan Offord, with whom we have had many conversations about our profession and the wrongs we have done for so long. We ask that you also connect with Marian Sich or Victoria Larcon to continue the conversation, especially for the media, to continue the conversation with our task force members and with the leaders of this task force and the interest group, to continue calling on them if you in your organizations need support. I know we have today colleagues from other health professions, smaller health professions, smaller associations. I dare to say that probably we have some associations where the 99% of the staff are white. I dare to say that. And we are here both to fix, to stop the wrongdoings in our own profession, nursing, and also to help others. So let me open now for questions for the media first, Marianne, and then for anyone else that would like from the attendees, our own colleagues, other professionals, to ask questions, please.
Doris, there is a question from the pointer, a reporter with a pointer.
Anek, please. Go ahead, please. Can you promote?
Yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
Hi, can you hear me, Dr. Grinspun?
Yes, I can hear you, and it's so good to have you. So let me tell about Anuk. He is actually a newcomer a year here in Canada. I know his entire life, and he's one of the best reporters I know. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Dr. Grinspun. First of all, I would like to apologize for everything that I've just noticed the horrid stories that nurses have to go through. And I'm sorry that you have to go through all of this in a profession that you actually live to serve others. My first question is to RNO and all the nurses that spoke before us. I just want to understand, I understand these 19 recommendations are kind of guiding principles that will help us combat anti-Black racism. But I just wanted to understand if RNAO has explored any kind of partnerships or is currently in talks with hospitals or schools, colleges to implement these recommendations.
I will let the co-chairs first speak because that's happening as we speak. Go ahead, please, Angela and Corsita.
To answer your question, like this report is new. We're just releasing the recommendations today. So the question you asked is for the future. We will definitely collaborate with other institutions. We will advocate for anti-Black racism and to dismantle it in all organizations, health organizations. That means hospital settings, in academic settings, even with governments. So these recommendations have not been implemented. They will be implemented.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Corsita, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Dr. Grinspun. So thank you for the question. What we would like to say is that this work has been, we know that it's important work, and because of the situation that necessitated this report today, which is our experiences as healthcare providers, as Black women, as Black men, we understand that it's not just in the nursing profession that this is that people are experiencing it. We know that our we have colleagues as physicians who experience this. We have colleagues who are ambulance attendants, other people in other areas are experiencing this. So we are hoping by doing this work, even though we haven't called names specifically, we tried to be as not as specific as we can, but in the areas that it can be reached, to be able to address, have a basis by which people can say, okay, this report exists, and go to it, to our site, and see what the strategies are to start to do their work in-house. So we're hoping that this at least gives people an opportunity to be able to say, this exists somewhere and we can go and find that.
To build on my colleagues' remarks and on your very important question that you triggered me to think, has anything happened so far? A couple of things. One is the formation of the interest group that came out of the task force. So that is already happening. The second is, as my colleagues said in their remarks, the publications that they did have tremendous repercussions. The number of invitations that they had during Nursing Week to present at various places, I think they are very humble in not sharing about that. The fact that they have been invited to be members of curriculums. And another piece that happened, and I believe, Daria, that was in your organization, that they asked to form a similar group. And so they use our terms of reference. So it's very interesting, your question, because as Angela and Corsita said, we are releasing the report only today, right? So it's forward going. Yet what's different perhaps with this task force versus others is that the ripple effects, the volcano, started to happen even as we were going through, and likely it's because of the webinars that Dr. Cooper Brathwaite and NP Corsita Garraway led, where many absolutely expert Black nurses, academics, researchers, people with lived experience, students like Ola, that is a member of the task force, colleagues like Daria that work in mental health, The sharing that they did in these webinars, both people of the task force and from outside of the task force, are showing Black excellence, showing the expertise and the lived experience. That started to create change that I had not seen with other, reports. The tragedy with reports is when you have outstanding reports and they stay in a shelf. This report kind of got legs in many ways ahead of coming out. And now that it's coming out, you bet we are going to have formal discussions, formal conversations with the organizations that lead the schools of nursing, with Ontario Hospital Association, with the long-term care associations, all of them. The other group that we are having very serious conversations is with the College of Nurses of Ontario. And I want to take a second on that. First of all, we sent a letter on behalf of the task force on the issue of one of the recommendations. We sent a letter a couple of months ago already on the need to collect race and ethnicity-based data. We don't have that in nursing today. So as my colleagues expressed before, and if you were to hear all of the task force members, you will feel the pain of their experiences vis-a-vis discrimination from patients, from co-workers. Well, you need to understand that it is very likely that the extent of complaints to the college by the public, right, is much higher. And it's not because they're much less good workers or less experts or less knowledgeable. It's because of systemic racism. So if we don't have that data, we cannot put the finger on that. And therefore the College of Nurses cannot have a screen that actually is not biased against our Black colleagues. And then the same with disciplinary action, etc. So your question triggers many important thoughts that we are pursuing and will continue to pursue. Follow-up question, please. Anukul, you have another question.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Corsita, and thank you, Dr. Grinspun. I do understand. I was actually looking for that.
But Anukul, if you don't call my colleague Angela Cooper Brathwaite doctor, then you are going to need to learn to call me Doris, because I'm just good with that.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Doris. Just wanted to understand. I was looking for that data, and you're right. Ontario doesn't collect that kind of data, but I was just able to find Black nurses represent the maximum, at the most number of nurses in Canada. I think it's 29.9% that is shared with nurses from Filipino ethnicity. So these two rank at the top, but there's no data that is available at Ontario level. You're right, they don't collect race-based data, but I just wanted to understand from you, what kind of, do you at RNAO have any data that you can share which is divided as per ethnicity?
We will get back to you, because as a result of when we send the letter to the college, and I said to you, we always need to look at our own backyard, we actually now include in our membership database, of course, it's voluntary, not mandatory, fields for race and ethnicity. So we have for Black nurses, we have for indigenous, etc. So we can talk later on if you are interested, and I can put you in touch with our Director of Membership and Services, Daniel Lau, and he can share with you more. We will be happy to do that. It's an open book.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So next we'll go to Desmond Cole. Desmond, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this report. May I ask 2 questions?
2 and more. How can we say no to you?
Only 2, I promise. The first question is that one of the recommendations of this report is to, quote, develop and enforce policies on anti-racism, such as zero tolerance of racism from staff, nursing leaders, patients, and families. And I'm curious what zero tolerance of racism means to the RNAO and how this approach would be different from what's happening in nursing right now.
If I can comment from RNAO and then my colleagues from their experience. There is no zero tolerance today. There is, anything can happen. You can have a patient that says, I don't want that black nurse. You can have a patient that says slurs to black nurses. And we have seen situations where they need to continue to work with that patient rather than actually calling on that patient. That is, I would say, depends very much today on who is the manager, what's the type of unit, what's the type of organization. And I will let my colleagues talk from their own experience. And I would ask any task force member to share their experiences. I think that, and I don't know if we have it on tape, but if we do, we should share it. That first webinar that we had, when we called the webinar really to talk about how to cope with the tragedy of the murder of Mr. George Floyd, what we heard after the beginning of the conversation about Mr. George Floyd was the experiences of our nurses, of our own colleagues, day to day. So if you have day to day, it means there is every tolerance, not zero tolerance. But I will let my colleagues speak from their own experiences.
Okay, I would like to go and just say hi to Mr. Cole. I worked with your dad many years ago in mental health. Just as there are codes in hospital like code black, code white, code blue, institutions could implement a code, and I am not going to say what we call that code, with zero tolerance against racism. I know in the 1980s, I was working at Lakeridge Health, Oshawa. We had physicians who were very abusive to nurses, and we started that code white. And what we did, when a code white was called, say in maternity, nurses from around the hospital came to that unit and stood up like a force. They didn't say anything, but they arrived at the unit if they could get away from the unit and stood with us in solidarity. And that decreased that incident of verbal abuse against nurses at that institution I was working at. And I had the opportunity to educate those nurses. I was a director of nursing at the time. So just like there are code whites and code blues and code black and code brown, they could institute a code, give it whatever color they want to call it, and said zero tolerance. And even back at Lakeridge at the time, people who were abusive, patients and the families who were abusive to nurses, we had in our policy that they were going to be escorted out of the institution by our staff. So we had no tolerance, and having that policy in place, I don't work there anymore. It really changed the picture and the landscape. So similarly, I would say a policy could be developed by all institutions in Ontario, zero tolerance of racism against nurses, physicians, or any health staff, and implement it. And everybody who comes to that hospital as patients, they are informed about these policies. The staff are informed. You have to do some education to educate people so that they know, and once you implement that policy, it will have teeth.
Corsita, you want to add?
Just to say that, to add to that is just to say also for staff when they are orientated to the unit, to a hospital, to the organization, that is one of the recommendations, becomes one of the same way that we learn about IVs and blood work and where to call these people security. Part of the teaching is that in this organization, our culture is to not tolerate this, but also to have people know and understand who to go to, where to go. And there has to be some transparency for that. People can't feel that they are not going to be believed. So once it's out there, then there's a easier uptake for people who are experiencing their abuses. I mean, it's the microaggressions that we have experienced. You say certain words, people turn around and give you an attitude, or they say make certain comments. So to even understand that those things, what they look like and how they sound, and if it sounds that way to the recipient, it doesn't matter what the intention was of the messenger. That's the recipient's interpretation of it. So there has to be a way for us to have those conversations openly and honestly with people without there being offense taken. Yes.
Any other of the members of the task force would like to respond to the question? Go for it.
Just a few additions to complement what Corsita and Dr. Cooper-Brathwaite mentioned. For a lot of the academic institution and workplaces, these recommendations will give them traction. Some of them have already started to do great work, and I look forward to hear from them. But others not so much, and because there's perhaps not enough representation, not enough open-mindedness to face the crude realities of their environments. And so I think these recommendations will help to move the needle on that. But by way of example, to go on to what Dr. Cooper-Brathwaite mentioned about code whites, if you go in a hospital setting and a code white is enacted, you know where the policies are, you know what the training was about, you know what is being said in orientation, you know the consequences of what will happen after a code white happens. And you know also that there's reports, and people, leaders, as well as employees know to regroup and revisit what happened in order to improve and prevent this from happening again. These are tangible ways to tackle something that should not be part of the environment. So we're looking forward to hearing other leaders and other employees, have uncomfortable conversations to grow together. It's, when you're facing fear and when you're experiencing pain, sometimes you just have to stop to avoid it and go around it. You have to go through it in order to grow and in order to do better. So I hope this complements the answers that you're looking for.
Daria or any other members of the task force, or Madam President-elect, Dr. Holloway, or Morgan as the Director of Care, our President, any that wants to add? These are such important questions that have been raised.
Thank you, Dr. Grinspun. Yes, I am agreeing with all what has been said. In terms of a zero...
you can put your camera on, please.
My camera is on.
Oh, then it's me that I am not seeing the full screen. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, and in response to Mr. Cole's question, a zero tolerance means exactly that. But the challenge is that it has to dribble down throughout the organization to every single employee, every single faculty member, and every client, every patient that comes through that organization. So once you can get those policies in place, and this report has done the groundwork, the recommendations are here. Things have been silent for so long, and now we have the recommendations here. I don't think any organization in Ontario or beyond could say that we don't know where to start. this report has given us a place to start. And the stories, I mean, the committee has just, the task force has just collected the information, but these things have been happening for years. This pain, this agony has been happening for years. So we are moving forward. And I just saw a comment from Mr. Tran that it sounds like the task force is developing. The task force is fully implemented. The task force has completed its work, but now organizations that we are reaching out to need to start to develop, and we're here to help them. We are here to help.
Thank you, Dr. Holloway. And I must recognize, I just saw kind of flittering there. I would like Dr. Jocelyn Hazayak to put the camera, please, to be at the honor. And I would like to share that Dr. Hazayak is the first Black president of RNAO. This is public information, she celebrated her 90th birthday a few months ago. We even made a virtual cake for her. Can you put your camera on, and can you share your own feelings about seeing this task force and about the work that you did with RNAO many decades ago? I'm pretty sure that I saw you in the attendance there. So do we have you? Can you, Marianne, find Dr. Hazayak and promote her to speaker, please? And I think that our President Morgan Offord may want to also say a couple of remarks, Morgan.
Jocelyn, you're unmuted.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I have unmuted. Oh, start the video. Okay.
You need to turn the screen a bit lower so we can see you. And meanwhile that you do, I need to say something else about you, please, Dr. Hazayak. Well, you think, you know, people talk about social media and people brag that the young people and the young people and the young people and the young people, well, the young person of our first Black president got into Twitter on her birthday and started to tweet. So please stop the ageism too, to any of us, right? And don't say only the young people know how to do social media, because this young lady, which is our first Black president, actually started to tweet at a young age. Keep going. All yours to say a few remarks, please.
Well, are you hearing me?
Yes, we hear you beautifully.
Okay. Right.
Share where you are, because they think you are here in Toronto.
So I am here in Trinidad since COVID started, and I haven't returned yet, but I will. I plan to do so in April. But I want to congratulate not only the task force, but Doris for spearheading this. I think you are to be commended. And then this task force did an excellent job. As I shared earlier on when they asked me, really, racism was always there, but it wasn't in the forefront as it is. Remember, I was the president in the early 70s. So we are going back almost 50 years. And while it was there, it was low-key, hidden. And now it has come to the fore. And I am so proud and pleased that this task force, and Angela, I don't know the others. I've met Angela many years ago, many years. And she was always an assertive young woman. And I see now that she has spearheaded this and did a wonderful job, all of you. And I just hope that you all pursue with the organizations and the institutions in getting your recommendations implemented, because we know in the past, there are always task forces, there are always recommendations, and they are left on the shelf. And this is far too important to leave on the shelf. So it's up to you all, and not only the task force, because we can't leave it on a dozen or 15 people, but all those who are listening now to start doing something. I am 90 now, I'm too old to start doing anything, though I have always been a very assertive, active woman, Black woman in the Black community in Toronto when I was there, and in Alberta when I worked. So good luck to you all, and I'm terribly proud that this has occurred before I shut my eyes. Thank you all.
Dr. Azakaya, first of all, you ain't going to shut the eyes anytime soon because you have a lot of life in you and you just started to tweet, so that's that. So you have at least 10 more years of tweeting and you need to teach the younger generation how to do it. And I want to tell you two things. This report will not stay in the shelf. I want to share what's the faith of the task force now, because I think it's important for people external to the task force to know. The task force is not fading, first of all. The task force becomes an advisory. And twice a year, we will be meeting the task force, the interest group under the leadership of Daria and Dania, the task force under the leadership of Corsita and Angela, and of course, the staff that will be leading some of the work. And we will be meeting to ensure that those recommendations are put in place. And that if those recommendations, if any of them gets a check mark, we build new ones. Before we close, or there are more questions, I do want to give a minute to our president, Morgan Offord, that was not involved with the task force, but was very involved in what was happening about her observations and her wishes. Morgan, please.
Thank you, Doris, and thank you so much to all of our task force members and everybody else who was involved in this really important work. I echo Dr. Hezekiah's words of how proud I am of the work that this group has done and the work that I know that they will continue to do. This is a tremendously strong group of individuals who have come together to really work to combat the systemic racism that they have personally experienced and know that others have experienced as nurses in our healthcare system. I remember the first webinar that I attended following the death of George Floyd and how shocked I was about the experience of these individual people and how privileged I felt to not have had to experience that. And I am just so thrilled that you have continued this work and continued to work through really difficult, hard, and challenging things and your own personal experiences, to be so open and willing to share those and use those for positive change, not just for you, but for everybody else within the healthcare system, within nursing and beyond. And I am so incredibly honored to be able to be here for the release of your report and to be given the opportunity to speak. So thank you so much for all of your work around this, because I can't even imagine how difficult it has been for you at times, but it's so important.
Thank you so much. I believe that there might be additional questions to the panelists. Can you tell me if there is any?
Desmond, do you have a follow-up question?
I did. Thank you so much. And Dr. Cooper Brathwaite, thank you for acknowledging my dad. My mom is actually still nursing in the city of Oshawa, so the family tradition continues. The other question I wanted to ask was that this report references George Floyd. I've heard several of you on this call today say the name of George Floyd, and the report also mentions Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Philando Castile, Ahmaud Arbery, Black men killed at the hands of the police, but in another country, in the United States. One of the pillars of this report is advocacy. And there are families in our country, in our region here in the Greater Toronto Area and across Ontario, who have been fighting the same struggle. Regis Korchinski-Paquette, DeAndre Campbell, Andrew Loku, Anthony Oust, Jamal Francique, a young man named Moses Erhir, he killed January 21st by the police in Peel region. And that's not to mention Black people who are facing discrimination inside of our hospitals, inside of our nursing homes, inside of our psychiatric wards, who are also engaging in advocacy and need support. How is RNAO going to engage in advocacy if it's not saying the names of people who are killed here and amplifying the struggles locally of Black people facing discrimination in healthcare with the police and beyond?
So Desmond, I may say a comment first, and then my colleagues will build on that. First of all, I want to thank you. Thank you for pointing that out and for saying that the reason that we mentioned Mr. George Floyd is not to discount or to not remember others, is to say what triggered us to call that webinar that turned out into an intensity of the experiences of our own colleagues day in and day out. We all hear experiences from Black nurse colleagues that are tremendously difficult, but that day we heard one after another, exactly like now you're mentioning all the names of the people that have been brutally killed. We absolutely will mention everybody. Thank you for saying that. And we will continue also to lend our voice. We have been part in terms of policy of aspects like defunding police and others that we can discuss more. And I would be, as the CEO of RNAO, grateful for your advice also. So thank you. Thank you for raising that. And I will give it to Angela and Corsita.
Okay, I'll just like to add that yes, all those Black people who have died, we would acknowledge them, but we had to start within the nursing profession first. As caregivers, we are faced with racism every day, and we still have to carry on and take care of patients who are even being racist to us, or our colleagues who are being racist to us. And as nurses, we have to start within the profession of nurses first. And then we could reach out to the patient population that we provide care for. We have to deal with nursing, its education system, its workplaces. We have to address the racism there first before we start to go to patients. Because we are care providers, and if our colleagues, we are equal to them in terms of academic qualifications as human beings, and people can't respect us and acknowledge who we are and acknowledge our contribution to this profession. We got to start with our house first to clean it up, and then we will start to move out to other houses. That includes the patients and all the broader community. And thank you very much for your question.
Most definitely, thank you.
Thank you. And next we'll have a question from MPP Jill Andrew. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. And I would love to turn on my camera, but I'm not able to see it right now. So I'll just keep speaking. First of all, I would really like to thank you all for this seminal report. As I mentioned in the chat, I know that these issues and these recommendations, are not quote unquote new. These are calls coming from nurses, coming from my mother, my aunt, my cousins, many of your family members who are also frontline healthcare workers, from yourselves. So I really want to say thank you for the work that you have put forth. And in my question, I asked whether or not RNAO, the Black Nurses Task Force, the Black Nurses Leading Change Interest Group, had connected previously with the Ontario NDP official opposition here in our province, of course, or more specifically, the Black Caucus. because I want you to know that we are eager to meet and eager to help operationalize these recommendations so they do not stay on a shelf the way many recommendations have with this government and the previous governments, quite frankly. So I want to say thank you again for your work. We have already put forth legislation calling for issues such as race-based data on sickle cell, on the plight of nurses, especially Black and racialized nurses who we know are underpaid, under-respected, under-protected at work through Bill 124 and otherwise, and of course, addressing systemic anti-Black racism in various sectors. We are doing the work and we would love to work with you to help operationalize this report. So if you haven't been in touch already, please do, and I will include my contacts in the chat. Thank you so much for your work and for your leadership and for this session. I appreciate it.
We will for sure absolutely be in touch. I just want to mention also other parties and people within parties, many of whom I was impressed to see how many MPPs we have today are here. It is encouraging to know that MPPs will help, and we need all parties to help. If you look at the issue that we have with internationally educated nurses, 20,000 of them waiting in the sidelines, eager to work. If you were to take a picture, I always say take a picture of them, of the 20,000, they will either look like some of my colleagues or they will sound like me, right? There is no doubt an element of human rights, an element of systemic discrimination, of racism, of absolutely amongst the situation with 20,000 internationally educated nurses, some of them waiting up to 8 years to be processed to contribute to Ontarians. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I appreciate your comments and I look forward to connecting with the task force.
We will.
My greetings from Toronto, St. Paul's. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
For all the work you do.
Thank you, Doctor.
Doris, good enough.
Next, we'll go to Mona Walrond. Go ahead.
And also, Ifra, I saw we have a student. I would very much like to give her the opportunity to also speak. In the chat, I saw a student, a nursing student.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, this is Mona Walrond. Thanks for taking my call. The question I ask is about mechanism to record interviews. Recently, well, not recently, actually, many years ago when I worked in the field of nursing, I recall applying for a supervisory position in public health. And I didn't get a position, but then after the interview, I asked where was my weakness and so forth for feedback. And I was told that I said certain things which I really didn't say. And I thought if there was a recording of the interview, I could have benefited and so could the interviewer, because I could have seen where I may have made errors and could benefit from improving or other. And I was fully qualified. In fact, it had turned me off to the point that I thought, well, if this public health department doesn't need me, I can reach out to another organization. And then I applied to RISE and became a sessional appointee there. And in fact, then that same unit kept me on, and I thought they were fearful that I would leave because I'm very highly skilled. And I thought this shouldn't happen, really shouldn't. There should be a mechanism in place to record the conversation so that both parties can benefit post-interview. So I'm wondering, what do you have in place now to avoid those kinds of situations? Thank you for taking my question.
Comment for RNAO, and I will also comment benefiting from the recommendations of some of the colleagues of the task force. And I want to in particular mention Dion Sinclair. I don't know if Dion is with us today. She is the chief nurse at the KMH. More than once, she said in the task force, in the panels of interviewees, in the panels, panels interview you, you need to have a Black senior person. You need to have a internal champion. It sounds very hard in terms of, thinking that otherwise you don't have a champion, but it's true. She said, you need to have it embedded in the structures of interviews. You need to have it in the processes. We are, I can tell you in RNAO, changing a lot of our practices in terms of human resources, in terms of the hiring, the onboarding, the ongoing education, etc., both in relationship to Black and other racialized colleagues, and also in particular also about Indigenous colleagues. In fact, we have one, I should announce it now, that is starting in a few days. Maybe I will keep it as a secret. Rachel, some of you know Rachel Redwick, that is the chair of the Indigenous Nurses and Allies Interest Group. She actually is coming to work at RNAO starting the 14th. So here you go. And we have, of course, many amazing and expert Black staff. But you need to embed it in the structures. I don't know of organizations that tape the interviews of human resources. I don't know of any. I don't know even if that is legal, but it's homework that we could do and we could advise if that it is indeed. And maybe MPP Jill Andrew will be able to also advise us on that, or other colleagues that are focusing their efforts internally to their own organizations. I mean, I was, and I do want you to know, MPP Jill, that you guys chose the first Black leader of the party. I'm not talking about Andrea. I'm talking about of the Ontario NDP, right? And that was this weekend and very impressive. And I sent the congratulations. But I don't know about taping interviews. We do tape interviews in terms of research, etc., but that's very different than HR. I don't know if any of the colleagues in the task force know of tape interviews, meaning HR interviews. If any know, please, if you can share.
I don't know myself, no, but I can speak from experience of obviously, well, maybe not so obvious, but in my work, I do a lot of interviews. And one specific interview, if I can share my experience, was a Black candidate who had difficulty understanding what the questions, the intention and the purpose of the questions we were asking. And I sensed a blockage. And anyways, went through the interviews. I had to stop in the middle of the interview to take a moment to reframe, first of all, to validate her mindset and to reframe the language that was used on our interview package so that she could understand what we are looking for. And from then on, the interview shifted for the better. And afterwards, during the debriefing, the post-interview debriefing, I took a moment to address some differences in cultural differences in what I knew my colleagues heard or could have heard and interpret versus how the candidate was coming from. And to take that moment, a few minutes, was important so that they can do better in the future. This was the value of me being part of the panel that I could take and move forward with. And since then, well, now we're making great jumps within our HR practices. And I wouldn't say it was as a result of that, but when you know better and you're more aware of those invisible dynamic, culturally based dynamics that are part of a dialogue, an event, an activity, you have to take the opportunity to to pause and reflect on it together and learn and grow, so that negative experiences can stop from happening.
Thank you so much, Dania. I know we have a student. I lost track of the Q&A and of the chat, but if you can locate and give her the mic.
Yeah, next we'll go to Dasola. So Dasola, you can go ahead and speak your question if you'd like. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yep, perfect.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the presentation and meeting with you so far. I just wanted to inquire if there would be more reports or research produced, and if it's possible to get involved as a student.
So first I want to tell you that you could start one. You could gather a group of, you could approach any of the task force members. You could approach a professor if you have a professor that you feel close to, and you could drive your own questions as a student of your experience. I think that Ola, for example, and if you can go like this, Ola, she was the student in the task force, right? So don't ever think that you need to wait in nursing until you graduate and until, you know, keep going now. And if you need help with that, we are here to help you. And as for the task force, if they will do more research, and we as RNAO, most likely yes, but don't wait.
Okay. Thank you so much for the advice. I love it.
Next, we'll go to a question from the Q&A box. So someone is asking, how do we make inclusion operational for those staff that are already in the workplace?
Angela, Corsita, Claudette, would you like to, or any of the task force member?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. How do we make inclusion operational for those staff that are already in the workplace?
Claudette speaking. From my experience, organizations can implement diversity, equity, inclusion training, but there's so much more that needs to be involved. So as it says in the recommendations, everyone needs to go through a reflective practice so that they are actually not just getting head knowledge, they need to get some heart knowledge and a commitment to understanding what is going on. So some organizations are well on the way, and some organizations have yet to start. Some organizations are only at the acknowledgement stage, but we need them to move to the commitment stage.
I would add to that, if I may, that it really needs to be embedded in the HR practices also, in addition to what Dr. Holloway said, and in the senior management levels. It needs to be embedded because I would say, looking from experiences, even in organizations that I worked before RNAO, I will take Mount Sinai, I will take several other hospitals, whether here or in the US that I work. Even, and is what Dr. Holloway said in terms of the heart, not only the head, because in some of these organizations, you know, they put decades ago, you know, anti-racism officer, you know, if it's not acted upon, if it's not day by day, minute by minute, when that patient says a slur, when that staff looks whatever way, when the agency nurses that come from agencies, which many are racialized, get the most difficult assignments, and I have seen it, and I have fought it also. If they don't have whether it's the ally or the manager right away saying this is not okay, you know, it will continue to be an intellectual exercise. So we have the officer, you know what I mean? Is what Dr. Cooper Brathwaite said before, and I'm using the doctors in purpose because I think it takes a lot of effort to be a doctor. And by the way, Dr. Corsita will be soon doctor too, so here you go. And we have many amazing Black excellence in academics doctors like Dr. Bucola and others that I don't want to mention them all, but I get very excited that we have so many. But what Dr. Angela said, which is that quote, you know, I remember that quote, Angela, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, when a doctor was behaving, you know, not very good in many ways or one way, that the quote was called, and we all circled that doctor and said nothing. And I am not offending medicine. This was real, and in some places is still. So I do think that the issue of the quote is something that we could push, and I think I don't see why couldn't be done, quite frankly, right? But it's the heart, right? And I think that will drive Dr. Garraway, the heart, not only the head, right? The heart of the behaviors. Anybody else that has other comments related to this?
I'd just like to say it needs a transformative perspective. If this report awakens in people to see some of the experiences that the Black nurses have experienced and the trauma caused from racism, how many of them have suffered mental health issues as a result, the lack or underrepresentation of Black nurses, okay, in management and senior executive roles. If this report brings about a transformative perspective, some of those members of at the top, executive leaders, may change their practice through reflection, critical thinking, and said, look, when I look at my organization, I don't have what it takes to provide the kind of leadership and to provide the kind of direction for the staff who work with us, and they're willing to make that change. Then it comes from the head, go down, they put the policies in place, they educate their staff, their colleagues, and so forth, and start putting policies into practice. Not only having policies, but changing their practices, because we could have policies, but they don't mean anything unless we change our practice. So when you have policies that are implemented in such a way that it has impact, things are going to change. You have to educate. You could educate people. I know people who are educated, healthcare providers, and they still smoke. They know smoking is not good for them, but they still smoke, okay? You could have had knowledge, but it doesn't mean to say it changed your practice. The knowledge has to change practice, okay? The policies is just acknowledging that so-and-so exists, and this is what we like to do. But until it begins to change practice, nothing will happen. So people have to be willing to buy in and to say and to demonstrate it by their behaviors that they're willing to make the change and to make the staff accountable for their behaviors with consequences. Then things are going to change.
Our last question is from Lucy. So Lucy says, my organization does not even acknowledge Black History Month. How can I help them start at the acknowledgement level of just the month?
Recommend that and ask that it happens until you will organize it, and we will help you. That's a very similar to the question of that's all about research. You know, be the change you want to see, and we can help you. Like, you don't need to be alone on that. We can help you. Task force members can help you. we will buddy you with someone. If you want to be the change within your organization, connect with us. We will buddy you with a colleague from the task force to mentor you, to walk with you the path. Does that help? And don't wait, because there is still a few weeks left. Better late than never. Any other questions? I think you said last. Is any other comments from any of the task force members? Can we, I don't know if you can, Victoria or Marian, promote our colleagues. I would like you to also put Javier Punya, please, on the screen. I do want to acknowledge Javier, who has been joined by the HIP with me. And I don't know if Brittany came today, but Brittany started the work when Brittany was with RNAO. And then Javier took it over kindly when I gave you a call, if you would continue working with me as the staff resource. Javier, your work has been magnificent. Your support of the task force, your attentiveness to the needs, your authenticity, and your genuine caring, not only from the head, from the heart. And I also would like to recognize Olgita. Olga, I don't know if Olga is there, if you can promote her. Olga is the one that did all the design and work with the task force, changing and changing and changing until we got it right the way the task force wanted. Brittany, I see you there. Put the picture. Brittany's there. I'm so glad, Brittany, you're there too.
Doris
And I would
was
like,
there earlier, but I think she's moved.
No, she just wrote. And I would like to acknowledge also, if you can put Renee. Renee, your expertise, your lived experience, your advice. Thank you. Your chats and allowing me to chat with you openly. I cannot thank you enough. Really.
Hi, Brittany.
And Marian, for leading the orchestra of the report, of putting the report together. Thank you, Marian. Victorita, I know that you will be working the media for the many calls that we still will get. And Marian, if I forget anyone because of my emotions, because I'm going by the heart, not by the book. But there are Raulito. You will notice that I go with Ito with everybody, Angelita, Raulito, and it's because in Spanish you Ito everybody you love. So here you go. Get used to it, Dr. Claudita.
And Doris, Victoria and Renee, of course.
I mentioned Victoria and Renee, I did, yeah.
I have to leave very shortly, so I just want to say thanks. I have an interview coming up and I have to get ready for it. And for Jocelyn, thank you. Thank Morgan and all of you who participated. I said, we appreciate your attendance. We appreciate your input. We look forward to working with you in the future. And I must leave. And I said, have a great day. As the Newfoundlander would say, have a grand day. Okay.
Thanks for so much, Angela, for everything.
Thanks for your leadership, Angela. And if any of the people in still present, the over 100 people that still are with us, if you need any support, if you need support because you have an interview, if you need support because you are going to an interview, if you want to be a speaker for Nursing Week, if you want to be a speaker for the media, we want Black nurses to speak for Black nurses. So please put your name forward, go for it, and you have many of us ready to help you and support you and cheer you in any way you need. So thank you for everything to everybody. And Dr. Hezekiah, thank you for being again with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
We've had a request from the media. Someone is looking for a nurse in Windsor area, I believe. So are there any Black nurses available in that region for an interview?
So
just put it out there now.
If anyone is ready that is in the call, in the webinar, put your name, please. And Marian will approach, or Victorita. And if not, just so you know, Corsita, if you get any request like that, we have a database. We always find the nurse.
It's been circulating through our database. So that's why I'm putting it now, because we don't have anyone presently. I don't think we can find anybody at the moment.
So we will through Daniel. We will through Daniel.
What's that, Daria?
I'm saying that Black nurses are most likely doing 2-3 jobs, and the media may want to be flexible with their timing to grab stories, etc. And I know some in Windsor, but they're in emergency, and we all know how the emergency rooms are right now.
You may want to approach them, Daria. Maybe they can find, after work, and the media will be flexible, I'm sure.
Yes.
Any other comments, questions, colleagues? If not, we go onwards for better, for bigger, and for activism to make sure that every single recommendation becomes reality, and that your lives become richer, better, easier, and more fair in years to come, starting today. Thank you.
There is a question from Anonymous in the question answer section there. I don't think we touched on it, if they're still there.
Go for it, Daria, if you can read it.
Okay, they say, how do you get one's nursing career back when one's manager has threatened one to leave the workplace and has made it difficult for one to stay in the workplace? One has suffered a lot of trauma.
Any of our colleagues that would like to comment?
I can say that it's very challenging to suffer so much trauma in the workplace and have very little support. And I can speak from my experience of having been a part of RNAO groups, from the task force and now to the interest group. We are a safe space and welcoming nurses who are experiencing these to come and join us to discuss, and we can troubleshoot how to tackle their individual situation and advocate for them. As the report itself shares, we constantly have a fear of appraisal for speaking out for ourselves, but putting our brains and our heart together may be able to help this individual and others, or going through similar situations. It's time to call out our leaders and those in charge in organization and decision maker to be supportive and mindful and culturally competent, etc. So it's let's get together with whoever shared that.
And I also would like to add that we have LAP, the Legal Assistance Program. And if you ever experience a situation where you have been done wrong on unjust causes, connect with us. That's why RNAO is here. It's one of the reasons. That's why LAP is here for you. Make sure you are a member of LAP. And yes, we do provide you connection with legal advice. It doesn't replace the camaraderie and the mentorship and the support from colleagues, but sometimes legal advice, you need to have it, and we are here for you to take it on all the way. Any other questions, Daria, now that you spotted that? Any other comments or questions? We don't want to leave any unattended.
No other questions there.
Victoria Savage has their hand raised up. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, my apologies. I actually, that was a mistake. However, now that I have a moment, thank you so much for all the work that's being done in this area. I live in the Northwest Territories. We have a massive Indigenous population. The work that's being done in terms of this anti-racist work is absolutely inspirational to me. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
And if I may connect you with Daria. Daria, if you can put your email in the chat. Daria, why don't you share the work you are doing now as a director, please? Because I think it will be very inspiring for our colleague, and you guys should. And maybe, Daria, that's the next research piece where you involve the student that wants to be involved in research.
Yes.
No, I mean it. I mean it.
I was not prepared to talk about my work, but I'm director of nursing for Chibougamau First Nation Council in Northwestern Canada, Ontario. I work for Indigenous communities with Indigenous communities as well. And part of my work now is to try and recruit Indigenous nurses to come work in the communities, as well as finding a way to mentor and encourage Indigenous children to pursue further education and, be a part of our workforces really. And so Victoria, I don't know if you're a nurse or not, and I'm sure that you probably are employed in NWT, but you're welcome to join us at Chibougamau in Ontario.
Thank you for the invitation.
Or you can
It's wonderful work.
In some programs. You can partner on interesting programs.
Absolutely. The same, speaking about facing racism in the workplace, etc. It's always difficult for us to insert ourselves in these spaces as racialized individuals. And so, we can recruit, but there is also an issue of retaining folks who look like us. And so you and I can always discuss on how to, change our work environment to recruit and retain Indigenous nurses, Black nurses, and so on.
Beautiful. Do we have any other comments or questions?
That was the last question we had.
Thank you, Ifra, and thank you for all your support today, Ifra. And so thank you, colleagues, to our co-chairs, Corsita and Angela, to our co-chairs of the interest group, Daria and Dania, to our president, Morgan Offart, and to our president-elect, Dr. Claudita. Thank you very much, and to all the panel members, and to all of you that stay for overtime, because the importance and the urgent need for action. Thank you very much. Have a fantastic day, and have a fantastic rest of Black History Month. And for our colleague that said that your organization is not commemorating, please connect with us. I promise you we will connect you right away with someone. If you can put your email, we will connect you and help you how to navigate that. It will power you up to feel that you made that difference.
Dr. Grinspun, and Black History Month, February 2022, the theme is February, today and forever. So not just relegating Black history just to 1 month, but throughout the year. And that is certainly exemplary in our report that this work goes forward, not only with the task force, with our new interest groups, but out into the community, to organizations and academic institutions.
Well said. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
A big thank you to allies on this call.
Thank you.